The Alcatraz map is a great training area where you can focus on improving many aspects of your gameplay. This is where you're able to work on situational awareness, reaction time, movement, and weapon accuracy. You have 5 lives, so there's a lot more room for error. This allows you to push more enemy confrontations without the fear of getting sent back to the lobby immediately if played strategically. What you're about to witness is my Alcatraz gameplay, where I will show you my thought process through the situations I encounter. When jumping into a game, you'll want to loot up and find weapons that you're comfortable with. Once you've done that, you are ready to commence. Remember, folks, the only way you'll improve in Call of Duty Mobile Battle Royale is by engaging in as many weapon fights as possible. Get out of your comfort zone and start pushing enemies whenever you hear shots. Just remember that you won't always win your confrontations, but that is where you assess what you did wrong and learn from your mistakes. When fighting in close quarters, you must have decent movement. Getting stuck on crouch can be dire, so that's one aspect that must be focused on when in game. No one's perfect, and getting stuck on crouch happens to the best of us, but the less often it happens, the more success you'll have when going up against multiple enemies at once. Most enemies that you eliminate will always try to come back. It's an ego thing, you can say. That's why it's very important to stay aware at all times. As you can see, I've been knocked by an enemy using one of those spam shotguns that take no skill to use, but it's okay. I have 4 lives remaining, so I'll be able to get my revenge in time. I'll just wait for the redeployment flight, get looted up, and continue to be as aggressive as usual, folks. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, our goal is to win the game in the end, but what's actually more important to me is continuous improvement. You will have those occasional frustrating games where you want to break your device at times, but I highly advise you to not do that. From experience, I know that we can't win them all. What I usually tend to do when coming back from a deployment flight is locate an enemy, that way I'm able to take his loot. Just be cautious when doing this because you never know if their teammate is close by waiting to take you out. And no, I don't mean he's waiting to take you out to dinner. When it's getting relatively close to end game, the zone starts to decrease, which means squads will more than likely begin to gather together. It is advisable for the most part, but for me personally, I like to continue to be that lone wolf. As mentioned before, when you look for those difficult situations, you eventually build that much needed knowledge of how to overcome tough scenarios that may come your way. As you just saw, that enemy that knocked me down had the same mentality as me. Off his deployment flight, he located an individual and took them out in the hopes of acquiring much-needed loot. Luckily for the lone wolf, his squad was in the vicinity to save him. Duckyo and his sister Urban Tracker didn't like the events that just occurred, so that just meant a few individuals had a lesson to learn. It's getting very close to the final zone, and most squads are trying to obtain their custom weapons. That's one very crucial thing that must be taken into account. Custom weapons can be an immediate game changer since it provides you with an obvious advantage. The rest of my squad is a little distracted trying to eliminate some enemies that currently have horrible positioning. Remember though, there may still be enemies lurking in other areas, so you mustn't stay distracted for too long in one location and always keep tabs on every angle possible. Some of the opposing individuals want those easy eliminations, so they'll always try to play the edge of zone and try to knock you if you let them. This is why I always preach to be as observant as possible and keep moving at all times. The zone will continue to push in, and this is where you'll have to be aware of your positioning and locate the best area possible in order to have an advantage over the opposing squads. It looks like we were able to cover our backs and take out those zone campers. This is what you must do quite frequently. You never want to be caught off guard by these types of enemies. Always be one step ahead of them and take them out immediately when possible. Right now, the situation is looking good so far. We were able to clear our backs, and now we'll continue to push forward and assess the area. I actually heard some shots near ruins, so I'll let my squad handle things by the weapons drop, and Duckyo and I will go check out what all the commotion is about. We were right. There was a punk lurking in that area, but Duckyo and his sister Urban Tracker were able to get things situated. More punks continue to finally show their faces, as you can see. We still haven't forgotten about the knock we got earlier, so we'll just go see if he's doing okay. Oh boy. It looks like these two punks were having a little reunion, and obviously they don't like uninvited guests. Things just took a turn for the worst. It looks like most of my squad is down and a few enemy teams still remain. I believe there is one more revive flight left, so this is not over yet. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, never give up and always play as strategically as possible when the situation gets tough. At this moment in time, you have to be extra smart where you land. In this case, I will always choose to land at the edge of the zone. This will allow me to have my back covered at all times, since I know not a single enemy will be in that area. I usually tell you guys to be aggressive a majority of the time. Right now, I don't advise that if you're in a similar type of situation. What I'll do now is just assess all my angles and try to locate as many enemies as possible. Having sufficient information is key when trying to overcome such disadvantages. As you can see, there's two enemies to the right of me. They are also trying to play the edge of zone, but I won't be allowing that. Luckily for me, I was in a much better position than the enemies. My weapons aren't the best, but when you can play the situation correctly, you're able to overcome such engagements. It looks like I'm the last one remaining from my squad. I do have information of where the final enemies are, but things still aren't working in my favor. I have one black armor plate left with mediocre weapons on hand. I know for a fact that the enemies are carrying their custom weapons, so I must play my cards correctly. The individual I just knocked was the last enemy from this squad, which means it's going to be a final 1 versus 2 situation. The odds aren't the greatest, but one thing about Duckyo and his sister Urban Tracker is that they never give up even when the going gets tough. I currently do have the high ground, but I know that the zone will start pushing me towards the enemies. The weapons I have on hand are decent, but what I'll have to do is push down to obtain my customs from the weapons drop crate. Doing so will have me sacrificing the high ground, but I feel like it's very much worth it. In my opinion, having my custom weapons will increase my chances of survival. Just note that more experienced players usually keep eyes to see if the weapon drops have been opened on their map. This unfortunately does reveal your positioning, so you must continue to be aware of your angles, because once they see you, you'll turn into target practice. As you can see, they have spotted me, but luckily the zone was pushing them left. This was my opportunity to make my move and try to get myself out of this unfavorable positioning. I've knocked one, but I have been heavily damaged. We'll just see what we can do with the last enemy. There you have it, folks. We have overcame and conquered.